And good morning. It's time for the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBC. And the Mike Hewitt Show is brought to you by Renegade River in Spring Lake.
Morning.
It is time for Mike to talk. See, I'm waiting for, see, the music played this time.
That's what threw you off,
But we
didn't it?
couldn't hear anything.
No.
Because all these buttons were pushed, and it disables our ability to hear.
It looked like a Star Trek episode.
But I'm just going to let things roll, and I'm just going to calm down and pretend I'm flying an aircraft, and I don't want to land in the lake.
Yeah, that's no splash landings.
Exactly.
Hey,
so.
Good morning, everybody. Listen, we've got on the line with us today Paul Mitchell, who is the chairperson for Faith and Freedom, the Faith and Freedom Coalition of Michigan. Paul, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Oh, thank you. It's good to talk with you.
Listen, folks, I attended a meeting yesterday evening down in, what city was I in, Paul?
We were in Granville last night.
Granville. Once I, all of those, I always go the back way, and I never exactly know where I'm ending up when I follow my GPS to an address. But listen, I got to tell you, one of the reasons first off, I'm very excited to have you on this morning. But one of the things that struck me while attending your meeting last night is the things that you folks are doing, the things that you talked about, and frankly, the literature that I left with sounded like someone was describing my radio show. And literally, because I didn't find very many things, if anything, that we disagreed on. And so I felt very, very comfortable with getting you on. If you would, though, tell listeners maybe a little bit about how you became chairperson, and then beyond that, what is the Faith and Freedom Coalition of Michigan?
Sure, Mike. One of the things that attracted me to the Faith and Freedom Coalition of Michigan is exactly what you're saying. The perspective was, I felt, matched my issues and principles like yours, and spoke to it in a different way. It spoke to those issues in terms of taking positive action rather than sitting back and saying no to everything. We need to move forward, and for me, I've spent my entire career looking for ways to move things forward. So it worked well for me. I got into Faith and Freedom actively after the congressional primary in the 4th District. It was a good primary. It was an interesting experience for me. Came up short in the primary and was offered the opportunity to take on the chairperson role of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, following Mike Bishop, who in fact won his primary and is now a congressman. I've forgotten the district. I apologize, but the Ingham County, Livingston County, Western Oakland County. So took that on in the fall, and we've been pretty busy since.
Very, very good. Just for folks, I was obviously never a congressional candidate, but I did run for the state house in an 8-person primary. It felt like a sock race. And from the voter standpoint, when you get into those kind of races, frankly, I don't know how they tell. It must become a blur when you're looking at 8 Republicans that all have a general same core. We maybe had different ways of getting to the same result, but we were all on essentially the same page. It is a rough and tumble business, as you've learned. But now, does Faith and Freedom Coalition, is it a lobbying organization, or tell me, what is it?
No, we're an issues advocacy organization. I guess on issues we would lobby, or we would put forth information. We're not a political organization. We don't endorse we don't support particular political leanings. We deal with issues, which is why the event you went to last night was a discussion of our draft of issues for 2015. What priorities we're going to put forward in the new legislative session at the state. Change to move things back to a more conservative, more family and faith-based environment. One that allows us to practice and express our religion, to raise our children and families, develop our careers and our businesses. That's our priority at the Faith and Freedom Coalition. And in looking at that, we had a lot of discussion with folks around the state, like we did last night, about what are the priorities that would make a difference in that. And we're going to focus on that for 2015.
Very, very nice. One of the things that struck me last night, and you touched on it a moment ago, is that, I'll use my own words if I can. It seems like a lot of the organizations, and maybe frankly the political party to a degree, the Republican Party, and I'll say that from my stance, not to put words in your mouth, but it seems like when the progressive or the uber left say that we're the party of no, Man, sometimes I think they're right, even though I reject that because I believe that I'm forward thinking. But then when I look back and I see it, it almost feels rudderless, is what I've called it. So when you touch on the fact that you're actually going to, put things forward and try to advance an agenda, man, I'm applauding you.
Oh, well, thank you. The good news is last night's event, we had a fair number of people there in general, almost universally. We had a really good response to the things we're talking about, and we got some feedback, and that's what we want, is genuine feedback from our broader constituency in the state about what issues are important to them and how they want them expressed. As you mentioned, conservatives by definition, are folks that want to be left alone. They don't want to have to have anybody tell them exactly how they ought to raise their family, or the extreme is like the school lunch program and exactly how many vegetables you should have on the menu today.
Yep.
So for conservatives to start to look at what is it we want the government to do, it's kind of a counter to the basics of conservatism. But what's happened the last 6-8 years, I mean, the greater time frame you want, is there's plenty of things for us to focus on that we can adjust the priority and culture of state and federal government to more closely align with our values. The good news is we have a majority in the United States Congress. I'm hoping that makes a difference. We have a stronger majority in the state legislature, and we need to work actively to make sure that majority reflects our priorities, as we talked about last night.
I think you're spot on. And two things I wanted to just make sure to touch on. One of the things that I really, really liked about your meeting yesterday evening was it was about half of the room were young people. And in politics, I'm getting ready to be 54, and I'm used to being one of the young guys in the room. And it was very, very nice to see high school age students and people in their 20s seeing that there's a value to a society that has value. And I really applaud that you folks are reaching out to those young people because they're desperately needed. I got 9 grandkids. I often talk about them on my radio show. People say, Mike, why do you do this? I got 9 grandkids. And I got to tell you, America has changed in my short lifetime. And so I fear for their future. And that's why I do it. So when I saw you folks as an organization reaching out to young people, I really applaud that, Paul.
Well, I think one of the secrets, first, thank you. I think one of the secrets one of the key ingredients to getting younger people involved is to speak to issues that apply to them, that are relevant. Some issues are more relevant to young people than others. They were for us when we were younger, although you're younger than I'm 58. But one of the things we talked about last night was education, and we talked about post-secondary education. And what families and young people need to know, information you need to be able to glean in order to make a decision on what to pursue for their post-secondary education. And one of the priorities of the Faith and Freedom Coalition in 2015 is to pursue changes in state appropriations language to require colleges and universities to release on a program-by-program basis to gather and release the information so that people can find out what the graduation rate is for a particular program, what the employment rate is, what they'll earn, and what the cost will be. As we talked about last night, you can find out more information about the reliability and cost of appliances or a car than you can find out about educating your young person for a career, and the investment's massive. You send several kids to college, and it's as much or more than the average cost for a family home. Yet you're doing it based on a wing and a prayer because you can't get the information to make a really reliable decision on that investment. And that's not how it should be. Taxpayers are paying for it too, not just the student, but the taxpayers are paying in Michigan, and for post-secondary education is massive, and we're not being able to show a return on investment. I
got to tell you, education in total is obviously it's a ringing topic, but when you get into cost, and you look at the increase in cost for higher education, we'll talk nationally, but in America, in Michigan specifically, where you've got a constitution in Michigan that says that the government shall direct funds to state universities, but then it does not provide for our legislators to have an effect on what is in the curriculum. And it's kind of like if someone demanded I give you $100, but I can't ask you why, nor can I give you any direction on what to do with it. And then listen, a conservative fellow like me says I'm not doing that voluntarily. If I have to give money, I demand input.
Well, I think rather than, I'm not sure that anybody kind of worry much about what I know about architecture, or for example. But I think the way to get to what you're talking about is to demand accountability.
Right.
That is, the curriculum you're teaching and the services you're providing result in young people getting employment in the fields they're pursuing, and getting employment that really allows them to pay back any loans they have and to live successfully.
Right.
But we need to be able to, if we can demonstrate that, I'm not going to second guess. I mean, we're back to conservatism. I'm not going to second guess exactly what they teach, because it's relevant to the labor market. It prepares our young people or people returning to college for a new career. Then, hey, more power to them. It's where they don't. It's where we spend a lot of money, taxpayer money, on equipment, facilities, and the people are borrowing money to go to college, only to end up completing college and not being able to find a job, or racking up huge debt and still failing at completing. You've got to be successful, or you shouldn't be running that program.
Paul, I agree, but I have to tell you, without looking at the curriculums, I think we're on a fool's errand. Some of these people will graduate with all of these different shades of liberal arts degree, which is a degree in absolutely nonsense, and be stunned that they can't go out and make $80,000, even though they've got an $80,000 or a $90,000 debt load. To your point, and it seems like they're to me, there's a lack of integrity on the part of the universities, not for them not to say, by the way, this is a great career choice you picked, except for you won't get a job. Thank you for the tuition you're paying.
Well, I think most people are rational. If you put out there the data that says, whatever it says, the completion rates or the graduation rates are low,
right,
or only 20% of the student body finds a career that's related to the education they received, I think most families, most people are rational. They're talking about a big investment. And again, if you go back to kind of conservative values, our job is to make sure that we provide the information so someone makes a wise choice, not to legislate what choice they're going to make. But that's how the federal nutrition standards for school programs were put in place. We're going to tell you what you're going to eat because you're too stupid to know how to eat healthy.
Only 4 green beans today, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, I told a story last night about my older daughter's high school. They have historically sold candy canes at Christmas. It's a fundraiser, and they were told they couldn't do that. Now, this is a Lutheran high school, but because of the school nutrition program they participated, they couldn't do that because it violated those regulations. So what they sold were wristbands that were like candy cane kind of color, and it said this meets the nutrition requirements, and they sold those. I posted on my Facebook page. And I talk about a level of just incredible stupidity. So I'll err on providing information to people, to making sure we have informed taxpayers and consumers, and let them make decisions. I'm a whole lot more comfortable with that than I am the bureaucrats and government doing that.
Oh, I thoroughly agree with you. Listen, you mentioned Facebook, and folks, I want to remind you that the Mike Hewitt Show is on Facebook, so go to facebook.com /The Mike Hewitt Show. I always say that wrong, but if you have a question, my point in bringing that up right now is if you have a question for Paul or I, you're welcome to either call in at 231-830-3109, or you can post a question to the Facebook page for the Mike Hewitt Show. Paul, when you talk about legislative agenda, how is it that your organization helps to advance that agenda? How does the mechanics of that work?
Well, it really, I think, first depends on what the nature of the issue is. First is to identify what are priorities to our grassroots base, which is becoming increasingly broad in the state. But it's conservative. I mean, I don't think we're going to get a big wet kiss from the uber left, as you refer to it, or a number of unions. But it's a conservative base. So identify first what the issues are, what's they're concerned about. Then we're going to put forth specific legislation to sorry.
Bless you.
My apologies. Specific legislation on issues like the education issue I referenced, or another issue that is really pressing for our group is Common Core. which, while it's still meandering its way through state government, an awful lot of the folks who we've talked with, and I think Common Core, as it's currently constructed, is damaging to educational freedom.
So your organization is opposed to Common Core?
As it's currently constructed, any version thereof, yes.
What I find fascinating about Common Core, just to pause on that topic for a minute, Paul, is that there are a number of folks in the legislature in both chambers that I know personally that I consider to be very conservative, good people that support Common Core. And listen, I'm not attacking them, but I genuinely don't know how that can be rationalized.
Well, there are some conservative groups, very conservative groups, that think Common Core is the right thing to do. I think we have to separate the current Michigan approach to Common Core from the issue of improving the goals for education for our K-12 system. The United States spends more than any other country in the world. We're number one in terms of spending money on K-12 education. And our students graduate from high school somewhere between 23rd and 25th in the world. The average reading level of entering freshman this year in college was 7th grade. That's the average. So we're spending a lot of money, and we're not showing much for it in terms of our young people. Now, part of it's the family, part of it's, the education system. There's a lot of components to it, but we need to change it. Common Core doesn't do that as it's currently constructed. As I mentioned, my older daughter goes to a Lutheran high school over here, and they dropped the state testing to compare where they're at compared to public schools as this transition to Common Core is going on, because they would have lost 6 class days between March and the end of the year to meet the testing requirements.
Yeah, just
think about that.
Paul, we're going to have to go to a break, but please stay with us, because I've got a number of other things that I want to ask you and share with you. So, folks, we'll be right back.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station. Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and we're on the line today with Paul Mitchell, who is the chairperson for the Faith and Freedom Coalition of Michigan. Paul, welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, just a brief note for everybody. Shortly, we're going to be joined, if I can talk right, by Jeff Grunow, who is he is with the Dewey Hill Foundation, to give us an update on how the battle's going over the cross in Grand Haven. So I kind of thought that might dovetail well with what we're talking about. But listen, before we went to break, Paul, one of the things you touched on was how we are scoring, where we're rating when we compare it with the other industrial or free nations in the world educationally. And listen, I own a gun shop at Renegade River, and I end up with a lot of political conversations, if you can imagine that.
I can imagine that.
Yep. And listen, irony being what it is, one of my very, very good customers is a local teacher, and he's a gun advocate. He tells me he's centrist, but he sure does sound awful leftist to me. And I tell him that. I say, "You're a nice guy, you're just wrong." And he laughs, and I laugh. But all jokes aside, one of the things that him and I talked about, and I'd mentioned it last night, and I'm not an advocate of this, so I want to say that before I get into it for listeners. But last week we had a fellow named Yuri on who talked about his experience growing up. He's a Czech Republic citizen, and he was describing their educational system that says that after they go through the first K through 9. Then after that, there's 5 different high schools that a person could go to, depending on their scoring and their educational career direction, which is decided throughout their educational process via testing. And I bring that up now because when you mention how we score very dismally, the teacher's response to this exact dialogue, this exchange, I was explaining to him how Yuri had described his education in the Czech Republic. The teacher was very frustrated. He said, "Well, there's really not a fair test." He said, "I'm surprised we don't score 70 or an 80th place rather than only in the teens or in the 20s on these given things." He said, "Because they focus on math or they focus on science." I thought, how come we don't? I mean,
Well, maybe we should. I don't know.
yeah, I'm thinking if we just do, and I hate to sound cliche because everyone knows I'm a conservative here, but if we just did reading, writing, and arithmetic and forgot some of these nonsensical, as I referred to it in the first segment, courses that just simply don't advance education. It's the old adage about now we have a more rounded education, and in the middle of it is like a donut to me, and what the whole is where reading, writing, and arithmetic used to be. Am I out of line with that kind of thought process, Paul?
Well, I think it goes back. I think it goes back to no, you're not out of line. But I think it goes back to establishing goals that we share with the school system. What will make our young people competitive in the world environment? Because we have to be realistic. Our young people, our businesses in Michigan that are hiring young people, are competing in an international environment, and what that means is they have to be competitive. And the skills of math, reading, writing are critical. So if we focus on what are those goals, share those with school systems, provide them assistance in how to teach for those. I stress assistance. The problem with Common Core is effectively what they're doing is here's your curriculum, teach this.
Right.
We need to provide information to local boards of ed so they can make rational decisions about how to best, with assistance of people that send people to school, how to best prepare the young people for a future. The other part of that, which is different in versus here, is we have to, and the governor's doing more with this, which I applaud him for, is to do more with what they call STEM education, science, technology education. We've neglected that over the last probably generation, but the last several decades, and try to find a young person that comes out of vocational school as a skilled heating ventilation technician or any other technical skill. There's demand. There's a shortage for them. They make good money. And as we talked about last night, not everybody wants to go to school for 4 more years to sit in the classroom. That's not how people are wired. And why not respect that?
If we look at the math on that point, I think I touched on it in the first segment, but 75% of those that graduate from high school will not graduate from college. And almost 95% of our high school curriculum is college preparatory courses. And to your point, listen, I'm a huge advocate of the vocational centers. The problem with the vocational centers, at least in my view, is that they are largely, not across the board, folks. I don't have a paintbrush that covers the whole wall, but they are largely used as a place to put children that are not, they skip a lot or they're just not academically. It's like a dumping ground for non-academics. And it's such a huge missed opportunity. And so I got a tour after I'd made my last, in fact, I had Senator Jeff Hansen on, and him and I had a very, very respectable, not debate, but we don't agree on this topic, and he's a very nice guy. We just don't agree on this topic. So after that, I plugged myself in a little bit deeper to see if I was wrong. And I had people bragging about the culinary class as one of the lion's share classes of vocation. And I'm thinking, you know what, listen, this is nothing against cooks, because I started out in my life in high school and then the first year or so after working in a restaurant as a cook. But I don't want to have the debate of what minimum wage should be after I mean, that's not how you support a family. It's just not. And so I'm thinking, are we really supporting people to be minimum wage earners? Is that what our schooling is about?
Well, I don't think that's clearly not what the governor and others talk about STEM education is about. It's about the technical jobs that we're currently needing to focus more on preparing our young people for and providing alternatives to going to college. Because your point about 75% don't graduate is correct. The problem is that those that graduate from high school, and I don't know the percentage, that go on to either college or community college, and then it ends. They have no set of skills to go out in the labor force with, and in many cases, especially if they go to university, they have debt. It's information that families and young people need to know. And it happens in the K-12 system. They aren't getting information that, well, you could be a tool and die maker, and here's how you get there, and here's what they do. That doesn't go on in our schools right now in terms of teaching people what some of these technical and vocational careers are. It doesn't go on, so the discussion is all about getting ready to go to college. But we don't need some people going to college, and they won't be successful at it. So let's provide them and their families information and make a wise choice. That's what we're about. With anything else is choices. And on that theme, as we talked about last night, one of the themes that one of the issues that we're very much engaged in is what we call empowering taxpayers, allowing taxpayers to make a choice, even about local millages. We believe the legislature needs to pursue legislative changes to allow voters in municipalities, and counties, and cities to either repeal a local millage or to modify a local millage, so that in fact a millage is passed as a 10-year period of time, then comes up for renewal 10 years later. It's an all or nothing proposition. Voters should be able to say, we don't need as much in that anymore, but we still want it around. Or this millage made sense 5 years ago, but doesn't make sense anymore. And currently, you can't do that. You get stuck with these local millages, and as you know from your area, certainly in mine and around the state, you get more and more as you go along. They keep piling up. And it's part of the tax burden that our citizens in Michigan face. We may have a Republican majority, but we still face a higher tax burden now than we were. And when you put all the local and state taxes together, and the efforts are to increase our taxes even more.
I did the math a while back, and I took the average family, assuming that there were both spouses in the home and that both spouses worked, and I added up all of the tax that I could possibly put my hands on that the average family would pay. And every time I did the math, it came up to the person that makes the lesser of the two incomes, that person is entirely working to pay tax. That person's entire income goes to tax. I found that's insane to me. No, and child care has went crazy now that the government has engaged that. Listen, also on your list, you talk about reinstating work requirements. What is this? What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that in 2008, 2009, there are many, with the economic downturn, many states, including Michigan, applied for waivers of federal requirements that individuals receiving some form or another of assistance had to comply with the work requirement. Now, it didn't necessarily mean they had to work. It meant they had to actively seek employment. It meant they had to retrain for a new career. They had to go to develop their basic skills if they had problems with reading and math. It had a series of requirements. Given the economic downturn, a number of states applied for a waiver, and that requirement was basically overlooked. The economy has improved dramatically in Michigan, in particular, and nationally. And we still have put back in place those work requirements. I firmly believe, Faith Freedom Coalition believes that most people can work. Work has value. Work has value both for the family and it's value for children to see their parents work. And we need to expect that, we need to support people when they need help. We also need to expect that they're going to work to get themselves back in a situation and no longer need that support. And one of the things that are key to that is reinstating these work requirements, and in the future requiring that before a waiver is requested of the work requirements, that there be a joint resolution of the legislature, so that the legislators and the public knows that the work requirement is going to be waived. Because most people don't know that's the case right now.
Okay, tell me this. By the way, folks, we've got Jeff. Are you with us? Jeff, are you with us?
I sure am.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that Paul Mitchell and listeners realize that you were on the line. Jeff Grunow, am I saying your name right this time?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. With the Dewey Hill Foundation. I've done that 3 times in a row. I'm really proud of myself, Jeff. Listen, I want to, if I can, Jeff, hang with us because I want to finish up with Paul. And I think, Paul, you're going to stay on with Jeff and I. Is that right?
I will stay on until I need to go to another meeting, and I'll quietly go away.
Okay, very nice. Listen, before we move beyond to the cross issue, I want to tell me about the Elliot Larson and religious freedom. One of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we touched on that is what drew me initially to your organization is faith and freedom. I love seeing those two words together. I just do. I embrace that wholeheartedly. So tell me what it is we're getting at with Elliot. Tell listeners what Elliot Larson is and how it relates to religious freedom.
Sure, and we're going to, just so your listeners know, we're going to continue what we did last night and have a statewide tour with what I call the grassroots citizens to talk about these policies and talk about them getting involved even an hour a month and helping support faith and freedom. The freedom to practice your religion, to express your religion, to raise your family and build your career. On the Elliot Larson issue, the effort was going on in the legislature, was proposed to expand the protections of Elliot Larson, the Michigan Civil Rights Act, basically, to include the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. different from some other faith-based groups that approach it just from a faith perspective, my experiences in running a variety of organizations. I retired, and our company had 650 employees. I looked at this and saw it as an economic issue, that it would cause issues in terms of people looking elsewhere to expand, to hire, and frankly refer to that effort as full employment for attorney bill. This doesn't provide protections to people. It's frankly another means by which people could claim that they were bisexual and sue employers or sue the local bakery because they wouldn't make them a cake or those types of things, and offered little to our state in terms of value and economic concern. And we need to pay attention to those types of things because these kinds of burdens stifle the economy. There was a study announced today that new federal regulations this year, and I think it was Heritage, I had to find it, but they estimate the cost of those regulations, these are federal regulations now, are $1.9 trillion. That's more than the GDP of some countries.
Right.
We need to, this is a good example on a state level of an effort to create another set of, quote, protections that was going to create a burden and with no demonstrated gain for the group that's claiming to protect.
To me, it's a fascinating thing. Listen, as a small business owner, one of the signs that hangs in my shop, and it will not come down, is we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. And listen, the idea that I've invested my entire life savings, every penny I have, and caused myself a liability, and then I'm told by somebody what I can and cannot do, I got to tell you, I think that's over the top. That's not America.
I've got a sign over my desk. It's been on my Facebook page before. It says, "Blessed are the young, for they will inherit the national debt."
Such a deviation from common sense our society seems to lend itself to sometimes. Yeah. But you know, the reality of it is that a very, very small percentage of the folks are actually engaged in the political process. And that's really how we've allowed ourselves to get where we're at, by people not engaging and not paying closer attention. Like you talk about millages and raising taxes. Most of those requests for money, millage increases, happen in May, when the turnout for voter turnout is like 1 or 2 or 3%, and most of the people that turn out are the people that are specifically engaged and financially benefit from whatever the bump in the tax is. And so,
well, part of that's I think our collective responsibility as conservatives, because you're an exception to this, Mike, but most conservatives don't wander around with their friends and neighbors and talk about, hey, did you see this one in terms of politics? Did you see this thing they're proposing? If we did a little survey and asked the majority, did a poll around that, people that understood what's going on with the Elliott Larson thing the expansion last legislative session, I'm willing to bet you a whole lot that 90% of the population didn't know what that was.
Right.
Last night we asked a question about the group asking about how they viewed the road package that the ballot proposal is going to come through. And as you know, there's only a couple of people who were there that even had the slightest understanding of that. It's a massive thing.
And both of the two people that knew anything about it were directly and specifically engaged in the political process. Listen, right. Paul, we're out of time for this segment, but before we go, before you work towards your meeting, tell folks how they can get a hold of your organization to get involved and to learn more.
Sure, thank you. You go to our Facebook page, Faith and Freedom Coalition Michigan, or our webpage is www.ffcoalitionmi.org. We welcome anybody, any questions people have, any input they have. We'd love to get more people participating on our Facebook page, because we post something, and more often than not, there's a group of folks from Ann Arbor every now and then that like to. One day it was called a rhino and a neo-Nazi fascist in one day. So hey, join the fun, guys.
Very nice, Paul. Listen, I hope to have you back, but I appreciate you taking time this morning with us. And
Thank
folks,
you.
We're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back with Jeff and an update on the Dewey Hill Cross.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station. Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and on the line with us is Jeff Grunow, who is with the Dewey Hill Foundation and also the Keep the Grand Haven Cross Facebook page. What is there, 12,000 some people on that?
Oh no, Mike, you're behind the times now.
Yes, story of my life.
We have broke 13,000.
Wow, very, very cool. And still with us, folks, is Paul Mitchell, who is the chairperson of Faith and Freedom Coalition of Michigan. Gentlemen, Jeff, tell us, where are we at with the battle? Are we done, or is it over, or what's the...
No.
Okay.
No, sir. This is not done.
Okay.
And you and I have had this conversation in the past. It'll never be done. This is people have to remember, this is something that transcends much more than Dewey Hill and our Cross and Grand Haven. This is just a stepping stone for them.
Right.
And when I say them, I say the people that want to take our rights away from us. Look at it. I mean, come on, ladies and gentlemen, let's be realistic about things. Our rights are being chipped away little by little by little every single day of our life. And it's time we stand up and say, enough, no more. The Constitution is there to protect us. People are twisting that Constitution to all ends of the world.
Well, no, listen, Jeff. Jeff, I got to stop you. They're not really twisting the Constitution. If you take the First Amendment and draw a line through all of the words that don't fit their argument and just look at the words that are left, then I guess they're accurate. You just have to get rid of almost all the rest of the words of the First Amendment.
Well, but
Sorry.
yeah. Well, what we're referring to is this, for instance, a division of church and state.
Right.
Everybody puts such credence into this letter that was written and assume that it's part of the Constitution, and it's,
you're talking about
was already set.
Are you talking about the letter that was written by Jefferson a generation after the Constitution was written that he didn't have a part in writing?
Yes.
Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes.
But remember what I said the last time we touched on this topic. I wish we could, because I own a gun shop, I wish we could use some of Patrick Henry's letters talking about the Second Amendment to define it.
There you go.
I think it's a very self-serving position. But I got to tell you, I happen to agree with Jefferson's thought of what it could mean, meaning he didn't, nor do I want a national religion. But even when you read his letter, I tend to be a Jeffersonian, folks, but when you read Jefferson's letter, it does not say what they purport it to say. Okay, it just rings the same bell that we don't want a national religion, and I would be as passionately against a national religion, even if it were mine, as I am against them wanting to remove my right to freely and publicly exercise my faith.
Right, exactly. But what we're talking about, like for instance, the issue on Dewey Hill.
Right.
A group was allowed to come in and start out saying Grand Haven is intolerant. They do not allow other displays up there. Wrong. Right. Incorrect. Wrong. Show it to me. It never happened. So then they're allowed to change and say, oh, well, you know what? It's against the Constitution. Yeah, that's it. Sure. That's the way we'll go. And under the guise of bullying and intimidation, they call it a win. Well, guess what, folks? No. We say bunk to that. We're not going to take it. So what we've done is we formed the Dewey Hill Foundation. It will be a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we will fight these things tooth and nail. You're
assuming the federal IRS will actually approve your 503. They may not. Well, the jeepers! This guy is a Christian and a conservative. We can't even contemplate such a thing as approving his 503c. I've been through that with those screwballs before. I got to tell you,
assuming it gets approved, yes.
Yeah, one of the things that's important for listeners, and I want to share with you two briefly, is that when we had Yuri on last week, and he talked about the difference between the Czech Republic and America, and he was quoting Lenin, not in the positive sense, but in the negative. And I did a little bit of thought after that, and of course I looked up the quote, and the actual quote was that religion is the opium of people. and it was written by Karl Marx, who was then parroted by Lenin. And the irony to the Czech Republic, and I think it's really important to contrast that to America right now, is that more than 50% of the Czech Republic citizenry, they do not declare a religion. But that does not mean that they don't have faith. It means they're afraid to say what their faith is. And do we really want an America where people are afraid to say what their faith is? And that's the path that these people would have us on.
Exactly. And our point is, why the citizens of Green Haven, okay, it's no secret that my dad was involved back in the 60s to get that cross put up there. Himself, Dot Creason, all that group. My 92-year-old mother tells a story about it to this day, all those quote-unquote men in the basement making their plans.
Right.
So, people have to look back at what the meaning of this cross was initially. It had nothing to do with religion. It had nothing to do with Christianity as a push of this is who we are. It was for hope. It was to give the citizens of the area hope.
Right, but
something to look at and something solid to say, I'm okay.
But Jeff, the same people will say it was only up there for 60 years, and then they'll go on to look at things like the Second Amendment and say, no, Mike, that was written by people that don't even exist anymore, and times have changed. And then I point out that the Michigan Constitution, that gives me gun rights in a much stronger language, was written in 1963. And it was about the same year or two after that cross was put up, and suddenly 60 years was. It's a question of how they want to spin whatever argument that's convenient for them at the time.
That's the thing, the spin.
Yep. What's up, Paul?
Mike and Jeff, what concerns me is the effort that's being underlying the effort they're making is not about the free exercise of religion. They want to eliminate any exercise of religion, and that's not what the Constitution either. I went to my school was James Madison College. We studied the whole process, the whole founding of this nation, and it wasn't the founding of this country was there should be no religion, as Mike mentions. It was not to. It was to avoid the establishment of a national religion or the enforcing you will be this faith. Right. And I think what we need to stand up for is we exercise. We want people to exercise their faith within the boundaries of not violating somebody else. That becomes, I think, the issue rather than simply say about a particular thing is we can't eliminate faith from our country. Otherwise, what do we have left?
Listen, I don't know the mechanics of what's going on behind the scenes, and so I am not going to allow this show to take us down a given path. But I will tell you this. Without any foundation, I must add, my sense is that it goes beyond faith and it's about money. And what I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks ferreting out the money in this, because I think that if we follow the money, and I do believe there's money involved, that we'll find out the reality of it has nothing to do with faith at all.
Can I give you a little bit of breaking news right here on your show?
Certainly.
You go to this America's United, whatever the heck they call themselves, Division of Church and State, the firm out in D.C.
Sure.
You can register as an activist for them.
Oh, I don't think I can stomach it, but thank you.
Do you get paid? Things that make you go,
People get paid?
I'm just putting that out there.
Okay.
I'm not going to say yes or no to that.
Okay.
Check it out.
I'm going to, because I want to do a show on this, and I'm going to work hard on following the money, because I really believe this is about money and nothing else. Listen, I'm wanting to be clear. I don't have anything to tie that to, other than a political gun instinct. I've been doing that long enough to get fat and bald. I smell money. So
I agree with you. There's got to be money. There has to be. And look at all the rulings when they do fight these things, and when they do win, or they don't win, they kind of get their way, so to speak. They have to be paid $50,000, $60,000, $500,000. It's crazy. So yeah, it is about the money. It really is.
It just seems to me it is. I mean, I got to sit. It's like I've talked about before. For someone to have to drive across a county line into a different city and down an arbitrary street to be offended tells me that that's an exercise that's beyond the cause of being offended. And so then it makes me look to why. And whenever I've got into politics, usually what's happening is obvious. And so as soon as I apply the question of why, I usually find money. And I think that'll be the case here. So,
and also, keep in mind that the Supreme Court also made a ruling that being offended is not just cause to bring an action. So that's why they're getting so creative now.
Right.
It's not about, and they've said many, many times, we don't have any interest in putting anything up on Dewey Hill.
A friend of mine,
we want to make a mockery of it. We want to make a mockery of your religion and your city process.
Right. A friend of mine last week when we were talking about this had posted a comment on the show's Facebook page, and he speculated that if Christians adopted the symbol of an anchor, that then they would then want to take the anchor down they're proposing to put up. And I think he's exactly right. It isn't the cross; it's the symbolism of it. That I mean, it almost gets to the point of being silly. If we say, okay, our new symbol is trees, are they going to want to remove all the trees?
Sure are.
Yep.
They sure would.
So Jeff, where are we at right now? We're down to about 2 minutes. What's the Reader's Digest? What's the current state, and how can people help?
Well, we have launched the foundation, the Dewey Hill Foundation.
Okay.
The page, Keep the Grainhaven Cross, is getting ready to change. Facebook has approved that change. So it'll be changing to the Dewey Hill Foundation within the next about 10 to 12 days is what they tell me.
Okay.
We have started a GoFundMe account to get up some basic funds just to get these filings done.
How can people find the GoFundMe account?
They can either go to the Facebook page and look it up there, or go to GoFundMe.com/Dewey Hill. That's DEWEYHILL, all one word.
Are you, Jeff? Is your organization having any engagement in the removing of their other effort? And I can't think of what was it, Hudsonville, down there where they removed the signage from the park.
We're going to get into that, yes.
Okay, because I know I don't know the outcome, but I know that was just discussed in a Ottawa County Commissioners meeting yesterday, and I didn't hear the outcome of it, gentlemen. No. I'm getting we've got 60-second sign. So if since I've got you both on, Paul, do me a favor, if you would take a couple seconds, tell us one more time how people can get a hold of Faith and Freedom Coalition.
Well, the easiest way to get a hold of us is on our Facebook page, which is Faith and Freedom Coalition of Michigan, and we've got the link to our website and all of that, and certainly would welcome people to join us.
Very, very good. Thank you very much, Paul. Jeff, one last time, how can people find you?
On Facebook, Keep the Grainhaven Cross, and go to GoFundMe.com/Dewey Hill.
Gentlemen, God bless you both. Keep up the good fight. Listeners, we will see you. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great week.
Take care.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station. Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station at downtown Spring Lake.